One of the biggest levers that you can pull when it comes to growing your agency is around your sales conversion rate. I know this from personal experience of running an agency for over 6 years. Making one of the biggest differences to our bottom line was changing our call close rate by just a few percent. And in this video, I'm going to give you the strategies and the tactics that you can go away and implement straight away into your agency to bump up your conversion rate and put more money on your bottom line. If you don't know who I am, my name is Laurence and I have built and scaled 2 agencies, Laurence Marketing and Hey You, where we now help other agencies generate more appointments onto their sales calendar. One of the biggest kind of takeaway concepts here is that what gets measured gets improved. I'm going to go through the ideal structure of a sales call, and then I'm going to go through a few rules and a few things that you want to make sure that you're doing and tracking and covering so you can bump up that close rate. When it comes to the structure of a sales call, there's really 4 parts to it. And the first part is the discovery phase. And this is where you're asking questions, finding out about their business, and ultimately understanding whether or not there's going to be a good fit for what you've got. And you want to be asking the right questions that's going to help you identify their problems, identify their desires, and make sure that your service addresses those problems and solves those creates those desires as well. First section is the discovery phase. If you find that you can help your prospects, then you would go on to the second phase, which is where you pitch your product or service, which is pretty self-explanatory. Once you've gone through that process, the third stage is going to be all around answering any questions that they may have. And then the last stage is going to be the objection handling, which is kind of where the sales process actually begins, in my opinion. So just quickly to overview those, and I went through them very quickly, but I'm sure most of you have already got a structure to your sales calls at the moment. But just to let you know what ours is: discovery, pitch, answer questions, handle objections. So that's the 4-stage process that we go through with our sales calls. But when it comes to a few rules and a few things that you should be doing on a regular basis to improve your close rate, the number one thing is to record all of your calls. You can go into Zoom, you can go into whatever system that you're using and automatically record all calls. And you should be doing that because another thing that you should be doing is reviewing all of your sales calls. You should listen to at least 1 call every single day to see where things can be improved. Because speaking from experience, it is much easier to make improvements to a call after it has happened than kind of during. Now I manage a sales team, it's very easy for me to go in and understand where their problems are within the sales process. I can go and I can review the calls and I can highlight things that the closer couldn't highlight themselves. And it's because I'm not in the weeds of it. I can take a higher 30,000-foot view and understand where the problems lie. And if you record and then review your sales calls, you're able to do the same thing. You're able to understand that if I said this differently here, or if I addressed this objection before it even came up here, it would have made the sales process a lot smoother. So make sure that you're always reviewing your calls. And that ties into the next thing, is to make sure that you're using a script, because when you're reviewing your calls, you want to make sure that you're saying the same thing to different prospects, the same thing time and time again, just to different prospects. And when you're reviewing your calls, you can see that, this didn't flow as well as it could have done. This worked really well. And you can update your script accordingly to make sure that any improvements that get made consistently on all future sales calls. And that can only happen when you have a script. Not only do you have a script, but you follow it, and then you update that script based on your call reviews. There's no point just listening to call reviews and saying, yeah, I could have done this better, could have done that better. You need to then take those learnings and put them back into your script to ensure that all future calls, you're taking advantage of those call reviews, basically. You also want to make sure that you track a couple of metrics, and there's one metric that very few people track, and you should track it, and that is the number of offers made. So when you're on a sales call, if they're not the right fit and you haven't made an offer to them, then you need to track that. Or more importantly, you need to track those that you have made an offer to, so you can see number of calls taken and number of offers made. And if there's a big disparity between those two numbers, you know that something's not right on the marketing side. So it's not necessarily a sales problem, it's more of a marketing problem. You're getting the wrong type of prospects into your funnel. And if that's the case, then there's a number of ways that you can fix it, and fixing it depends on where you get your appointments from in the first place. But without blowing our own trumpet, I'm very biased, but we have an extremely high offer made rate, and that's because we are able to hand select the prospects that we reach out to with our cold email before obviously we get to them on a sales call. So when we get to people on a sales call, the likelihood that them being a very good fit is extremely high because we've hand selected them in the first place. And that's why I love cold outreach so much. So you want to be tracking the number of offers made as well as the number of calls taken, so you can identify if there is a marketing issue that needs to be fixed, so you can increase the caliber of prospect that's on your calendar. You of course need to be tracking your conversion rates. As I mentioned earlier, what gets measured gets improved. So you want to be keeping a very close eye on your conversion rate. And you also want to have in the back of your mind the sales cycle. You want to know how many days on average it takes for a client to kind of sign on the dotted line and hand you, exchange of money from when you first spoke to them on a sales call. Not your second call or your follow-up call or whatever it may be, but your very first call. How long is that sales cycle? Because what that's going to do is it's not only going to enable you to have a little bit more confidence on calls, because if they didn't sign, it doesn't matter because the average sales cycle is 10 days, for example, but also you're able to take a lot more of a accurate reading as to what your conversion rate actually is, because you can look at how many clients you've signed based off the number of calls minus 10 days. If 10 days is that sales cycle, for example, that's going to give you a more accurate conversion rate if you can exclude that 10-day sales cycle, if that makes sense. So you want to be working with the most accurate numbers possible, because the last thing you want to do is have an influx of new calls and none of them are bought, and your sales conversion rate, looks really low and looks poor, and therefore you go and make a load of changes to it, when actually if you just waited that sales cycle, that extra 10 days, you might see that conversion rate bump up, and then you're not fixing a sales script that isn't broken. Another way to do that is to track calls in a qualitative manner, not just a quantitative manner as well. So even if you're your only salesperson in your agency, do an end of day report, writing down how well you think the calls went, not looking at kind of raw data, but just based on feeling and emotion, how well you think the calls went, how well you connected with your prospect, how much trust you think was built there, because these are going to give you insights into how much you're able to improve your sales script. So what I mean by this is, let's say, for example, you've done some call reviews, you've checked out, where you think you can improve things, you've made adjustments to your sales script, and then you go and implement those on your next few sales calls. It's going to take a reasonable amount of time to get the feedback on whether those changes have made any significant difference. But with qualitative reporting, what you're able to do is kind of shortcut that time period and get a better gut feeling, I guess, as to whether or not those improvements or those changes have actually made any improvements. As I said, the biggest lever that you can pull, most likely, or a big lever where you have a small input and a huge output, is that conversion rate on your sales calls. So if you're looking to grow your agency, then increasing that conversion rate is going to really help. And not only for all the obvious reasons, but it's also going to mean that you can afford to spend more money acquiring clients, generating appointments, because those appointments are of high value because you're converting a high percentage of them. If you want more calls on your calendar for you to be able to convert those calls into paying clients, then the first link in the description below is going to take you to a video. You can watch that video and find out exactly how we can help you put more calls into your calendar, and then you can speak with a member of our team, and we'll explain exactly how the process works. So click that link in the description if you want to grow your agency. So thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one.